Draco Malfoy, and why in Merlin's name is it always Harry? My Draco will hear about this. Chapter 12. A Question of Sanity. Going back to being Harry's friend felt like taking the first breath after having been underwater for too long. The feeling he had grown used to upon waking up, the dread of facing the day ahead, seemed to finally have dissipated. And when Harry waited for him in the entrance hall as Draco came up for breakfast, a bundle of sandwiches in hand and a hopeful smile on his face, Draco felt warmth flood his veins like liquid sunlight, allowing him to return the smile with ease. They walked the grounds as they ate their sandwiches, enjoying the fresh spring air and each other's company. Harry talked like a dam had been broken, updating him on every little detail Draco might have missed in the last couple of months, and then some more, eager to keep the conversation flowing and to not let any awkwardness resurface. And Draco was thankful for it. It felt familiar and normal and exactly what he needed. When they had finished their food and students were starting to file out of the castle, enjoying the warm Sunday morning, Harry sighed, admitting, "Hermione ordered me to the empty charms classroom on the third floor for spell practice, but I wanted to at least spend a little while alone with you beforehand." "It was nice," Draco agreed, throwing the rest of his sandwich into the lake for the squid to feast on. "I think we needed some time to acclimatize, so to speak." "Yeah." Harry nodded. "We need to do this more often. Spend time as the two of us without Ron and Hermione around, I mean. Or Crumb, for that matter." "Do you have a problem with Victor?" Draco asked, frowning. "No," Harry sighed. "It's just I spend all that time with Ron and Hermione at the Gryffindor table or in the common room, and you spend time with Crumb at the Slytherin table or with Hermione and him at the library, and I want that for us, too. Some time with you without any of them around." He fell silent, and Draco waited, sensing that Harry wasn't quite finished. When the other boy continued, his voice was very quiet. "It's not that I dislike Crumb," he muttered. "I just hated feeling as though he took my place these last few weeks. I know that it was my fault, but I really hated it." "Victor was a big help to me," Draco frowned. "I appreciate the way he tried to understand what was going on inside me. But, Harry," he forced himself to meet green eyes, to not flinch away from the contact, "there's no way anyone could ever replace you. It's just not possible." When Harry nodded, Draco smiled, bumping the Gryffindor's shoulder with his. "Though I certainly won't complain about getting some attention," he joked, making Harry laugh. "Well, good," Harry chuckled, "because you're stuck with me now. No more pulling away from me. I won't allow it." "Consider me warned," Draco grinned, leading their way back up to the castle. "So," Victor said as he joined him at the Slytherin table for dinner, scanning his face, "Hermione said you and Potter made up." "We did," Draco smiled. "Thanks for nudging me a little, by the way." "I did not do anything," Victor said quickly, but when Draco just grinned at him, he smiled back. "I am glad you are back to normal," he shrugged, taking a bite of his chicken. "Was I really that bad?" Draco laughed before wincing. "No, don't answer that. I think I know." Victor chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, though." Draco frowned, looking at him. "With the fourth task ahead, Hermione and I might be pretty tied up with Harry. I hope you don't mind." "It's fine," Victor assured him. "Hermione said she will meet me in the library in the evenings. I have to prepare for the tournament too. I will be okay." "Good," Draco nodded. "I wouldn't want you to think you're cast aside because of Harry." "I think you should worry more about him than me," Victor mused. "He does not seem to take ignorance well." "You might be right with that," Draco chuckled, looking over at the Gryffindor table where Harry was nodding at something Hermione was telling him. As if feeling Draco's eyes on him, he looked up and smiled as their gazes locked. Draco smiled back. "Do you remember when I told you about my friend Stoyan?" Victor asked, suddenly snapping Draco out of it. "Yes," Draco frowned. "What about him?" "When I noticed your feelings for Potter," Victor said quietly, "I compared you to them and it worried me. But I think I was wrong. I am not worried anymore." "Why?" Draco asked, confused. "Because now I think Potter will love you back someday. Victor explained, eyes locked with Draco's. Maybe he already does, but he does not understand it. Don't be ridiculous, Harry muttered, willing himself not to blush and, most importantly, not to hope. Harry is straight. He's crushing on a girl. He's not interested in me that way. I think you are wrong, Victor shook his head. Or he is about his own feelings, but maybe you are both too young. I always forget you are only 14. You and Hermione seem older than you are. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be offended or praised, Draco admitted, glowering half-heartedly. We're not that much younger than you. 4 years are a lot at our age. Victor laughed. Let's talk again when you turn 17. Fine, Draco huffed. I'll remind you. I look forward to it. Victor smirked, much too smug for Draco's taste. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of spell practice for Harry's task, revision for exams, actual exams, and time stolen away from everyone else spent with Harry. The Gryffindor seemed to have made it his personal mission to take time off, especially for Draco, at least once every 2 days, and he took it very seriously to the point where Hermione grew exasperated when they turned up late for practice sessions. Draco knew that he should not encourage Harry to slack off, but he couldn't help it. He was 14 years old and in love, and even though the object of his affections did not love him back the same way, he was not going to turn down his attention. If this was all he would get, he was going to enjoy it to the fullest. It was throughout the week of the third task that the reality of the danger started crashing down on Draco again, though, this time in the form of another prophetic dream of Harry's. Harry was waiting for Draco in the entrance hall before breakfast Tuesday morning, and while Draco had grown used to that, the look on Harry's face made him halt. What happened? He asked wearily. Harry sighed, gesturing towards the grounds. Let's talk. Harry then proceeded to tell him about the dream he'd had about Pettigrew and Voldemort, and how Pettigrew had been punished with the Cruciatus curse for a mistake he had apparently made. Voldemort said that Wormtail was in luck, Harry explained, that his mistake hadn't ruined everything and that someone was dead. Therefore he wouldn't be feeding Wormtail to a snake. So instead he tortured him, Draco muttered, frowning. Did he say who is dead? No, Harry shook his head. But he said he, so it's probably not Bertha Jorkins. Crouch then, Draco said immediately. It's the only thing that makes sense. Crouch escaped from whoever was keeping him under lock, apparently Wormtail, and someone retrieved him and killed him before he could talk. He bit his lip deep in thought before he asked, Did you tell anyone about this? Dumbledore, Harry nodded, and I wrote to Sirius. Good, Draco said. What did Dumbledore say? He said... Harry hesitated a moment, glancing at Draco, and it made his stomach swoop. If Harry was hesitant to tell him, it must be significant and worrying. He said that I might be seeing the inside of Voldemort's head, that the failed curse built some kind of connection between us, and that what I can see is really happening. Draco felt in his steps, freezing as he stared at Harry in horror. He also said that Voldemort was likely getting stronger. Harry admitted, sighing as if unwilling to continue, that all these disappearances bear a resemblance to what happened the last time he came to power. Bertha Jorkins, Barty Crouch, and apparently a Muggle has been killed in the village Voldemort's father used to live in. He thinks it's all connected. Of course he does, Draco whispered, still staring at Harry. I knew there was something weird about your dreams, but how can you see the inside of Voldemort's head? What kind of connection do you have to him? I don't know, Harry shrugged. Neither does Dumbledore, it seems. All he said was that my scar hurts not only when he's near, but also when he feels particularly angry, or something along those lines. But this is huge, Draco insisted. Is this some kind of legitimacy? Does it work both ways? Can the Dark Lord see what's happening inside your head as well? If yes, you need to learn occlumency, and quick! I only understood half of what you just said, Harry explained. Legitimacy is the art of reading minds, Draco explained, forcing his racing heartbeat to slow and his mind to clear from panic. It usually works only when two people are in direct vicinity, and eye contact is important. Not many people can do it, but it's a skill you can learn. Occlumency is the defense against legitimacy. It allows you to close your mind off against attacks. It's easier to learn than legitimacy. I can do it. You can? Harry asked, his eyes widening. Yes, Draco nodded. Mother taught me when I was a child. It's about learning to control your emotions. Can you teach me? Harry asked. I don't know, Draco muttered, considering. I've never taught anyone, but I guess I can try. It might be difficult for you, though. You've always been very impulsive. I see. Harry made a face. Well, it might be worth a try. I certainly don't want Voldemort in my head. Obviously, Draco scoffed. I'll look into it, okay? First, you have to get through that test tomorrow, and then we can focus on keeping the Dark Lord out of your head. Sounds like a plan. Harry nodded. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, there is more. More than an ominous mental connection you share with an evil madman? Draco asked, an edge to his voice. Do I need to sit down for this? No, Harry said, his lips twitching. Nothing on that level. It's just, I kind of accidentally saw some of Dumbledore's memories. How do you accidentally access someone's memories? Draco asked, his eyes narrowing. Are you sure you're no legilimens? Quite sure, Harry snorted. No, he had this thing out. He called it a pensieve. Oh, Draco nodded, understanding dawning on him. So you saw the pensieve and snooped around his memories. That's pretty intrusive, Harry, even for you. I didn't know what it was, Harry said defensively. I was just looking at it, and suddenly I was pulled in and saw all these things. Yeah, right, Draco muttered, rolling his eyes. Your curiosity will be the death of you someday, Harry, I swear. When the other boy only glared at him in response, Draco asked, So what did you see? You wouldn't have brought it up if it wasn't important. I saw memories of Death Eater trials after the First War, Harry told him, face growing serious again. Of Karkaroff and Bagman, 3 people called Lestrange and Crouch's son. Okay, wait, Draco protested, holding up a hand. Bagman! A Death Eater! Apparently he was passing on information to a Death Eater. He said he believed he was on the side of the Ministry, and that he was tricked. Well, Draco frowned, tipping his head thoughtfully to one side. Isn't that interesting? He keeps trying to help you in the tournament, and now we find out he's had connections to Death Eaters before. I don't know, Draco. Harry frowned. Bagman really doesn't seem the type. Did Quirrell seem the type? Draco countered. Or Bendigo? Well, no, Harry admitted, but still, he's not the only one here at Hogwarts. Karkaroff, yes, Draco bit his lips. He seems like the type indeed. He got free because he traded information to the Ministry, Harry remarked. He revealed Crouch's son is a Death Eater, and the Lestranges. My dear relatives, Draco said dryly. Strange that Father still seems so fond of him. Then again, he's free too, so I'd be surprised if he hadn't traded in information back then too. You're related to these people? Harry asked, his expression pained. Only Bellatrix is a blood relative, Draco sighed. She's my aunt, Mother's sister, and Sirius's cousin. Your mother's sister, Harry muttered, shaking his head. I don't see the resemblance. Of course not, Draco scoffed. My aunt is insane. Yeah, Harry agreed, trying to hide a shiver. It's amazing how normal you turned out, considering your family. Draco's thoughts flew to the letter he'd received at 11 and the conscious choice he'd made, but he quickly pushed those memories away. That was a secret he was determined to take to the grave with him. I guess, he shrugged. But we don't have to worry about my aunt now. She's locked away safely in Azkaban. Who we do need to worry about are Karkaroff, Bagman, and possibly my father. I still haven't ruled him out. I'll make sure to run if they turn up in that maze, Harry vowed, cracking a smile. Don't joke about that, Draco hissed. This is the last task, and therefore the last chance for whoever is behind this to hurt you. We can't take this lightly. I'm not, Harry promised, reaching out to entwine their fingers and squeezing. I swear I'm not, Draco. I'll be careful. You'd better be, Draco muttered. You can't make me forgive you and then just disappear. It doesn't work like that. I told you you're stuck with me, Harry snorted. I'm not going anywhere. I'll hold you to those words, Draco said darkly, squeezing Harry's fingers in return. As if Draco wasn't already enough of a nervous wreck upon waking up on the day of the third task, Rita Skeeter decided to publish another article about Harry, both her most ridiculous and her worst so far. Draco was sitting at the Gryffindor table for a change, unable to stay away from Harry for too long when the post owl arrived, bringing the Daily Prophet. Hermione was the one to open the newspaper first, while Draco was still feeding Aquila some of his toast, and all eyes landed on her when she spit out her mouthful of pumpkin juice after one look at the front page. "What?" they all asked. "Nothing," Hermione muttered too quickly, trying to hide the newspaper. Weasley grabbed it, though, and after reading the headline, called an incredulous, "No way, not today! The O'Callum!" Draco had enough of this at that point and picked up his own newspaper, unfolding it. Harry leaned into him, looking over his shoulder. They heard Hermione and Weasley protest weakly, but it was already too late. Both boys were silent as they read her newest malicious article titled "Harry Potter Disturbed and Dangerous." In it, Skeeter described Harry as mentally unstable and possibly dangerous, referring to his nightmares and complaints about pain originating from his curse scar, as well as his ability to speak Parlor. "Who did she talk to?" Draco asked, furious. "How does she know any of this?" But with one look at the Slytherin table, where Nott was staging a very unlikely imitation of Harry, he shook his head and muttered, "Never mind, I already know." Draco snorted and returned to his breakfast without comment. "I want to know how she manages to get information and interviews on what is happening in Hogwarts when she's supposed to be banned from school grounds." Hermione is through her teeth. "Well, you've been researching magical methods of bugging these past few weeks," Harry pointed out mildly. "Haven't you found anything?" "I have," Hermione insisted, But She broke off, an unfocused look on her face, the one she always got when she had an intellectual breakthrough. Draco raised an eyebrow at her, watching as she raised her hand to her ear and started muttering to herself. She then proceeded to excuse herself to the library, leaving the three of them staring after her in puzzlement. "Well," Draco shrugged, turning to the other two, "I have to leave. Charms exam." "Mito," Weasley sighed. "As story of magic, what are you going to do, Harry? Read again?" "Suppose so," Harry said, rather unenthused, but then Professor McGonagall called him over, and Draco took that as his cue to leave. When he returned to the Great Hall for lunch, Harry was sitting at the Gryffindor table with Molly and Bill Weasley, who had apparently come to support Harry in the tournament, along with the families of each of the other champions. He could see Diggory surrounded by his parents at the Hufflepuff table, and Fleur with her parents and sister at the Ravenclaw one. Victor was sitting at their usual place at the Slytherin table in deep conversation with his own parents. He looked up, and their eyes met, and he waved Draco over. Draco turned to look at the Gryffindor table, where Miss Weasley had already spotted him and was gesturing for him to join them. Draco smiled at her and mouthed, "One moment," before he walked over to the Slytherin table. "Draco." Victor smiled at him when he reached his side. "I won't keep you. I just wanted to introduce you to my parents. They have been asking about you." He then turned to speak to his parents in Bulgarian, and Draco could barely make out his own name before the Crumbs were standing and shaking his hand with a warmth and enthusiasm that took Draco a little off guard. Both of Victor's parents' English was very limited, so we had to translate for them, but from the gist Draco got, the other boy had been writing to them about him and Hermione. Victor's mother, a lady with silky black hair and kind brown eyes, pressed a package of baked goods into his hands, talking to him in Bulgarian until her son shushed her. Victor's father was a tall man that looked very much like his son, and he was shaking Draco's hand and tried to communicate with him through single-phrase patches like "Thank you," and "Victor friend," or "Come to Bulgaria, summer." After about 2 minutes of that, Victor cut his parents off and sent Draco over to the Gryffindor table. "They were reading," he muttered, nodding over to where Draco caught Harry watching him before quickly immersing himself back into his conversation with the Weasleys. "Go." "Good luck, Victor," Draco said seriously, touching his shoulder for a moment. "Watch out for yourself, will you?" "I will be fine." Victor shrugged, smiling. "Go worry about Potter." Draco chuckled and shook the hands of Victor's parents one more time before walking over to the Gryffindor table and taking a seat between Ginny and Hermione. He noted that Hermione, too, had a package of Bulgarian pastries on her lap. "Draco!" Miss Weasley smiled at him warmly, and Bill reached out to shake his hand. "How was your exam, dear?" All right, Draco shrugged. I haven't been able to concentrate much on exams this year, though, so I'm not sure I'll do as well as I should. Understandable. Miss Weasley nodded, her expression kind. He spent lunchtime in pleasurable conversation with his friends and the Weasleys, and as Draco watched Harry laugh and be remarkably comfortable in spite of the task ahead of him later today, it dawned on Draco what both Hagrid and Hermione had been trying to tell him after the second task. This was what Harry would have missed the most. This ticket into a family that accepted him as their own, even without blood relation. Weasley did indeed come as a package deal, one that Draco couldn't offer. And rather than the feeling of pain and unfair treatment he'd battled with when people had first tried to tell him this, he now felt understanding settle inside of him. It wasn't him. It wasn't that Weasley was worth more than he was, per se. After his Transfigurations exam throughout the afternoon, he joined the Gryffindor table again for the evening feast, though he could feel Snape's displeased glare on him. Draco did not care, though. Harry was sitting at his side close enough that their arms brushed every time they moved, and it helped rein in the lump of dread in Draco's stomach that was growing progressively bigger the closer the task came. When finally the champions were sent down to the Quidditch pitch accompanied by bagmen, Draco hugged Harry so tightly that the other boy's breath hitched.
"I'll be okay," he promised. "We've done everything we can. I'm prepared. I can do this."
"Be careful, though," Draco whispered. "I know that there might be things happening that are out of everyone's control. As soon as anything strange happens, run! I don't care if it costs you the cup. I just want you out of there alive."
"I know you do,"
Harry said, smiling as he gently freed himself from Draco's death grip.
For what it's worth, you make me want to not be competitive or reckless."
"I think that's the best I can hope for," Draco sighed, squeezing Harry's arms once more before letting go of him and allowing Miss Weasley to fuss over him. Not long after the champions had left, the rest of the Great Hall followed them down the path towards the Quidditch pitch. The stands filled, and Draco found himself once more with the Gryffindors, kneading his hands in a nervous gesture and looking out over the large hedges of the maze. He noted that though the stands of the pitch were taller than the hedges, the shadows prevented them from seeing anything happening inside of them. Draco swore, so this was another task they wouldn't be able to follow as it happened.
"Ladies and gentlemen,"
Bagman's voice sounded across the stadium, making everyone perk up.
"The third and final task of the Triwizard Tournament is about to begin."
Draco's eyes wandered to the small clearing at the entrance to the maze where the jury table was located. Harry was standing among the other champions. He watched him as Bagman rehashed the current rankings of the tournament and explained the basics of the third task. Only when Bagman turned towards the champions did Draco zone in again.
"So," he called, "on my whistle, Harry and Cedric. 3, 2, 1.
With the sound of the whistle, Harry and Diggory ran for the entrance of the maze and disappeared out of their sight, quite to Draco's despair. Hermione reached out to grasp Draco's hand, and he held on, thankful for the comfort. Victor was sent into the maze a minute after, and Delacour was sent last, another minute later. After all the champions were gone, the cheers of the crowd died and subdued into quiet chatters.
"Honestly," Weasley complained, "they could have at least thought of something to let us watch what is going on within the maze."
"They didn't for the second task either," Draco shrugged. Not that you know, he thought bitterly, but refrained from saying it. "So all we do is wait?" Hermione asked, sounding distressed.
"Yes," Draco sighed, his heart beating painfully in his chest. "All we do is wait."